love with 3 women.
I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you.
He's in love with all 3 of us.
Obviously, I think a lot of people were really surprised to see that you two are together. Provide some clarification on how this started, at what point you reached out, and what has really gone on for the past 4 months.
I reached out pretty immediately after the show just to kind of check in on Clayton, see how he was doing. And I did ask, I said, if you're open to having one more candid conversation, I would love to chat, but I will respect your boundaries if you would like. And we had a conversation that night. We talked until we couldn't keep our eyes open. And we talked every night since then until we decided to meet up a few weeks later. And a lot has happened since then, I feel like.
Yeah, we talked about everything. We really did. We went from point A to point Z. It was just really diving back into the entire journey so that there was no stone left unturned, talking about everything that we could, because we knew what was coming ahead when our past was going to become our present, watching this all back with everybody else. So we both felt that there should be no surprises. If this was going to work for us, we had to make sure that there was no shock as far as what was coming, because there was already plenty of that. The scrutiny and everything online and all the negativity was already challenging enough to handle. And the last thing I think we both felt that we needed to do was obviously surprise each other with something that we may have not shared.
Had you seen the final episodes prior, or were you watching them at the same time that America was watching them this week?
We saw the final 2 episodes in advance. To watch it live, I mean, it would be very, very tough to see that. I think we were able to talk about it as we watch it. Obviously, she hadn't seen the final episodes as far as how things went with the other women. So it gave us some time to be able to digest it and have the conversations we needed so that we could come into the last night and be able to really just express what we needed to and not become overwhelmed by seeing something for the first time.
Your actions speak way louder than words. I can't believe anything you say. Not one thing.
When you saw those episodes, what did you say to him for how he acted, with you and also with Gabby and Rachel?
It was heavy. Watching those episodes those were probably the most emotional episodes to get through, even more so than the one where we initially broke up. You can just see the heartbreak. You can see the disappointment on the other women's faces. And understandably, we had talked through those moments prior to me seeing it. So I had all the answers I needed. I have given Clayton enough of a hard time about all of the things that I've had issues with that he has done. We've had those conversations prior to seeing it. It was just an emotional thing to witness. We didn't really have to rehash conversations or get to the bottom of anything that I didn't know about. I knew what was coming. It was just emotional. It was just sad to see your friends go through heartbreak and to see Clayton be a part of it.
Now, Clayton, you said last night that you didn't intend to be malicious and that you wish that you had done some things differently and that you understand what you could have done better. So I'm curious kind of to hear from you. What do you wish that you would have done differently when dealing with this entire situation?
A lot of what happened could have been prevented had I asked more questions. And what ties into that is also not making assumptions. Those 2 things in conjunction, I believe if I would have went to the women as I was heading into Fantasy Suites and had that conversation with each of them individually, and just said, hey, I want to make sure that as we go into this week, we understand what this week entails and what can happen. And are we all on the same page with this? Because if we're not, let's talk about it before we go into this week. I made the wrong assumption that what goes on in the Fantasy Suites, there can be physical intimacy, there can be words of affirmation with love and such. And so I assumed that was kind of everyone was on board with that could be a possibility. And it was the wrong assumption to make. And so I definitely could have just asked more questions. It would have saved a lot of the heartbreak. And at least we would have all been more on the same page, way more so than what we were, which we weren't on the same page at all.
Clayton, do you believe that you actually were in love with all 3 women, or were those maybe just feelings that you were interested in them, but not fully in love with them?
In the moment, I want to say I did believe that I was in love with each of those women. Looking at it now from the perspective that I now have as I've reflected back on it all, I believe that I had fallen in love with the other women, but I was only in love with Susie. At this point, it makes the most sense to me that being in love with someone is when you can't see your life without them. And that is one person. And so with that definition, I believe that, I had fallen for the other women, but that's where I was lost and confused. And I told them what I believed in that moment. I really did believe I was in love with them. But now as I look back, I think I had just fallen.
For both of you, do you think that your edit was fair? Or do you think that there are some things that were left out that people at home didn't see?
If they kept everything in the edit, this would be a year-long season. So sure, there's things that I wish maybe would have been shown, but they weren't. I accept the edit for what it is. And I certainly have learned a lot. So I'm more thankful about that. It's not my job really to comment on the edit. That's not my job.
You both spoke about some of the negativity that you're seeing on social media. And I think obviously, no matter what someone's opinion is on what happened on the show, of course, online bullying is a really big problem.
For anyone out there who is dealing with bullying online, like I have subjected myself to be criticized, and I do accept that. But when people have horrible things to say, like I have no tolerance for that, and nobody should. I would want to encourage anyone that's on the internet, think before you post or before you send a DM in general. But also like anyone who's struggling with that, like block away. I pay for my phone. So, why do you get to come onto my vision and, harass me? I'm not going to tolerate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Clayton, I heard you say in a recent interview, you're receiving death threats. And I mean, that's just not okay. We all need to take a step back and realize this is a TV show and people might have their opinions, but online bullying is a really big problem. So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like you guys are handling that well and you made it through the saga. Now you're happy, and that is what matters.
Yes, we're very
Absolutely.
happy.
We are very, very happy to start the next chapter of our lives.
I believe that everything happens for a reason, and what's meant to be will be. There's hope here in this ring.